Hello and welcome to the Agency Show by Clientjoy. I'm Yash, co-founder and chief executive at Clientjoy. At Clientjoy, we help agencies manage their leads, proposals, contracts, projects, support, invoicing, and payments, the whole nine yards. The Agency Show is our podcast where we invite agency experts and owners who make 7+ figures a year to talk about their problems across their growth, fulfillment, and revenues, and we talk about their journey of solving these problems. If you're an agency owner, this show is for you. So do not forget to hit the subscribe button. This episode of the Agency Show, we've got Anna Wang. Anna is co-founder and CTO at Copysmith.ai. Copysmith helps brands write copy and content with 10x efficiency. It can be used to write copy for ads, product pages, meta tags, landing pages, and more. In this conversation, we talk about how agencies can write compelling marketing copies, difference between content and copywriting, and what kind of returns do well-written copies bring in for brands. This conversation is brought to you by Copysmith. Give this talk a listen if you're a marketing agency owner looking to write compelling copies and content for yourself or for your clients.
Hello and welcome to this episode of the Agency Show. We have with us Ms. Anna Wang, who is co-founder and chief technology officer at Copysmith.ai. Copysmith helps you create high-converting ads, product descriptions, emails, and more in seconds. However, what I think is that it essentially is a promise that you do not have to start from a blank page again. With that, Anna, thank you for joining us. If you can talk a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your background, a little bit about Copysmith, I think that will be a good start to this podcast, and then we'll dive straight into copywriting, content writing, and how that benefits the business.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Anna. Lovely to meet you. I grew up in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, which is a really small city, very, very residential. So very much oil and gas industry, no technology, no startups at all.
Okay.
So I find it very interesting that I actually got into this space. So I started programming just before I started university, actually, and I completely fell in love with it. I loved being able to create computer games, which was the very first thing that I created. And so I switched the program that I was applying for to be computer science. And that has brought me here 5 or 6 startups later working on Copysmith. Yes.
Wow.
So I co-founded Copysmith with my sister, actually, Jasmine Wang. So the genesis of all this was about 2 years ago, in the summer of 2019, I believe. We were building a Shopify e-commerce store. And long story short, it completely failed. And the big reason behind this is we just didn't really know how to do marketing. We weren't really able to write content that converted. We had these beautiful photo shoots, beautiful products, but we often wrote product descriptions that were like poetry. There was no call to action. There was nothing that would try to actually persuade a user to try to convert, right? And as you know, that's crucial in trying to sell any product, especially on an e-commerce level. Yeah, and then so 2 years later with Copysmith, we ran into this like beautiful AI model that could help us generate content. And we realized actually, if we had this maybe 2 years ago, maybe our business wouldn't have failed. And so we first built the tool for ourselves and then started extending out to our target base, like freelancers, e-commerce, agencies, and saw really, really good results. And that brings us to where we are now, continuously iterating.
Oh, nice. So amazing to know that. And so that story is the story of most businesses out there, right? That they have really great products. However, they are not able to position it well, or they are not able to write really persuasive copy, and that kind of really impacts sales. And there's just no way to figure out whether it's what's not working, specifically in the digital space, right? For businesses, and that's kind of specifically where agencies also come in. And so that's a great way. It's a great segue into what I wanted to talk about next, which is a lot of businesses and agency owners might not have or understand a little bit of difference between writing copy and then writing content. And this is something that I've seen a lot of times, where they'll have a content writer and then there's the same guy who's also writing copy for their landing pages and their emails and product descriptions and so on and so forth. So can you talk a little bit about what's the difference and why it's important, and what are the different skill sets that kind of go in?
Sure, I can quickly talk about why they are different first. So content writing typically is more about long form content. So you might see this in the form of like blog posts, for example. The key difference here is their end goal for the user. So good content writing might be aimed towards bringing traffic to your website, for example. It's supposed to engage your audience and more slowly over time build trust and serve the purpose of educating and entertaining them to the point where they finally go, I trust this company, and therefore I'm going to, invest in them by buying their product. It's a little bit different from copywriting, which is what typically drives conversion. The aim here is to persuade a user to do some sort of action, right? Some sort of conversion point, whether that be buying a product, signing up for a wait list, whatever you want to convince them to do. So the end goal here is that a copywriter should try to understand the needs of your target audience and harness language in such a way that it inspires people to subscribe to the brand that you're selling. So storytelling is key here. Copywriters are trying to drive sales, and emotion is what sells.
Nice. That's a really beautiful way to put it, right? The goal of writing copy is to drive the user to perform action. The goal of content writing is to build trust with the audience, and then over an elongated period of time, there will be an ROI that's in the future, right? Great to know that difference. And the other thing that I really want to talk about is one of the things. So I'm co-founder and chief executive at Clientjoy. I'm not a techie. I primarily look after resource management and team building and some amount of financial planning as well. However, I also love to write copy, and I've written a lot of copy over the last 7 years, and like there's innumerable amount of times it has happened with me that since it's a blank piece of paper, that I have to start writing something, and since it's the journey from 1 to 100 in copywriting or content writing is easier, but the journey from 0 to 1 is where most amount of frustration happens, right? Because there's blocks and you just can't get over it. And that was the point of your on your website as well that most resonated with me, and that kind of made me as well start using Copysmith, which is primarily the fact that I will never have to start from a blank page again. So talk to me a little about that, and what has your experience been in terms of having your users and customers kind of also being able to accelerate their 0 to 1 journey, and then making it easier for them to go from 1 to 100.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is the core issue we were really trying to solve. So I'm really, really glad that you brought this up, right? Because everybody starts from this blank page, Google Docs, Microsoft Word, wherever you write, and you need to start supplementing with research. And it's such a creative process and it requires so much brainstorming. And, this process can take so much time, somewhere from like 2 days to 7 days, at which point you finally migrate it over to Google Sheets, for example, where all the collaboration happens. So what we really wanted to solve was this first initial, very painful touch point in marketing, which was like, you stare at this blank page and you just have no idea what to write. Because what Copysmith can do is all you need to do is input a little bit of information about the product you're selling or your company brand. So things like a company name and a company description. For example, for Copysmith, it might be Copysmith enables you to write marketing copy in a snap, like magic. And then you click generate, and then we give you something like 10 to 15 variants back in whatever form you want. It could be Google ads, it could be Instagram ads, product descriptions, Facebook ads, just tons of different cross-platform promotions that you can do. So I think we've done this really well for our target segment, especially which is agencies, where we have a very nice sort of folder file system where you can organize your content according to different campaigns or projects you're doing. It's very similar to Google Drive, actually, where you can organize everything in a very methodical way. This helps with agencies, who are often dealing with multiple companies at once, and you want to be able to take it off. Yeah. So that is where we are.
That's super helpful because and so coming from a little bit moving towards moving from being a business to being an agency, so if you're a business and if you're writing copy, then there's only one business, probably one product or a couple of products that serves one ideal customer profile, and that's what you're thinking all the time, every day. However, if you're an agency, if you're working in an agency, then there could be different kinds of customers that you have, who are at different stages, who are in need of different types of copy, and so there's also some sort of a productivity element to it, right? Where an agency owner or content writers who are copywriters who are working at an agency who are serving clients from different domains are also able to kind of start the wheel running a little quickly, right? And so that's also kind of super impressive. The next thing that I wanted to talk about is, see, most people always talk about the fact that marketing actually is more of a storytelling. However, if you want to write a compelling story, you need to grab people's attention, and probably grabbing people's attention might be easier, but then also keep people's attention. And so what I wanted to kind of understand a little bit from you, from your experiences, is how can agencies or business owners generate urgency while they are storytelling, right? Through copy or through content.
Yeah, so this is a really, really interesting question. And I like to think of this from almost a storytelling point of view again. So if you think of it, what are the aspects of a really compelling story? So typically you have some sort of main character, and you have a goal that a main character is trying to achieve. And in the process of trying to achieve that goal, they run into obstacles, which they then overcome. And then if you then tie this to the business world, it can become a really interesting analogy, because in this case, the main characters can be your consumers, and the challenges that your consumers face are what your product is ultimately trying to provide a solution to. So the important thing is to highlight the sort of common problem that is faced by your consumers, and talk about how your product or your service can come in and help solve this problem for them. So storytelling emphasizes and surfaces the consumer's pain points, which ultimately allows them to connect with the product and really be motivated to use it.
Makes sense.
I think there's another part of this, actually. So I read a book some number of years ago, and it was about selling. And a really interesting point they brought up is when users are asked about, why did you buy this product? People will typically rattle off this list of very, very logical reasons. So I bought this car. Why did you buy that car? Because it gets me from point A to point B. But when they dug deeper and spent some more time on it, it turns out it was more related to status or interpersonal relationships between them and other people. So what you realize is people are very much driven by unconscious desires, not what they tell you. So good marketers acknowledge this, that people are driven by emotion, and they would tie that very much into their writing. So this is especially important if your product involves changing user behavior on some level, right? Because people don't like to change. And so you need to surface that pain and that emotion and use that as a justification for why they should change their behavior. So focus on the why, not the what of what you were selling. And I think that really galvanizes people.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And so a little bit more about storytelling is and it was so beautiful the way that you put it, right? Most movies that we see, or short films that we see, or whatever it is, or even TV dramas, or whatever the case may be, it is a story of a protagonist overcoming their shortcomings, and then kind of there has to be a conflict that they are able to kind of win over, and then it's kind of a happy ending, right? So and so these are like a couple of fairly simple and important components, and if you're able to write or create a story with your customer being the protagonist, and the problem that you're solving as the main conflict of that story, then that kind of just pushes you over the edge, right? And
Yeah.
it's also I'm also blanking on the name of the book, because I think I read the same book, which kind of spoke about most purchases that people make. They are not logical in nature, even though like we ourselves make purchases that are not logical in nature, and they appeal to some subconscious a part of ourselves, and that's kind of something that drives purchases, and good marketers definitely acknowledge that, and make sure that it's a try and make sure that it's a part of strategy as well. The next thing, and that I wanted to speak to you about was, see, when we have to, so there are so many avenues where copy is required or content is also required. So a small piece of content, so for example, just this podcast, if you think about it, this podcast will be converted into one final episode. There'll be a pre-version before the podcast where we'll have three kind of small videos, and then it'll also have a blog along with itself. The title will need the copy. It will be shared across our social media platforms. And so there are so many different places where we'll be creating all of these assets and graphics and copy and so on and so forth. And so the next thing that I wanted to understand was, most businesses are not able to have consistent copy, right? And so there's and this is something that I've also been through. So like if Facebook has this feature called memories, right? And so it kind of tells you 3 years ago, this is what you wrote and whatever. And so when I go through that, I'm actually able to see that, hey, for that patch of 5 months, our company wanted to sound funny, right? And then for that patch of 3 months, we wanted to sound formal. And it was not a conscious decision. It just happened somehow. So how can an agency or a business bring that consistency in the copy, which kind of is also, and by extension, a part of their brand identity?
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought this up. So the question was about how they can do this versus like what consistency would look like, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So first off, I totally agree with this, because words have so much power, and a small change in word choice can so drastically alter the tone of whatever you're trying to communicate. And the main part of it is like consistent copy communicates this really coherent message across platforms, regardless of how many platforms you're interacting with. And it creates a centralized image of a brand that consumers interact with. Now they are thinking about your brand as even almost a person. And of course, if a person is flaky and they tell you one thing and they do another thing, or they're constantly changing the way they present yourself, it's very difficult for users to trust you, because how are you to say that if I buy your product now, you won't just randomly change it down the line, and so their investment will go to waste, or they just completely lose faith in you to continue building, right? So it's so important to do this, because consistent presentation of a brand, I think I recently read this article on this, and it said increased revenue by 33%. And it's so important, because also by being consistent, users start picking up on those keywords that you are also trying to hammer in your brand, that particular emotion that you're trying to convey, and they will generate content on their own. They will write views for you. They will write blogs for you. And so in this way, you can get organic traffic. So in terms of just creating consistent copy, first off, that's why it's important. Then actually creating it is creating some internal document about, this is the way we want to present ourselves. These are the things as a company I strongly value, and that I want to show users that I value. And as long as internally you have cohesion around what does our brand believe in, every single person across marketing team, across design, engineering, whoever else is in your company, everybody needs to be on the same page about what your company values are. And as long as you have that in place, every time somebody in your company communicates to somebody outside, they will have the same words in mind. And in that way, you can probably establish some level of consistency.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And so before I let you go, this will be my last question. What I want to understand from you a little bit about is what's next for Copysmith? What are the difficult challenges that you're working on, and what are some of the things or pain points that you're most passionate about at Copysmith to solve in the coming few quarters or few months?
Wow, what an exciting question. There's so many things I'm excited about here. So Copysmith, back in March, we raised 10 million, and we're still figuring out what are the best ways to delegate this money? What are the ways that have the highest impact for our users? And one of the things that we've settled on is we want to build a world-class team. We are pretty well on our way there, but right now, actually, we are trying to hire an excellent growth marketing person. So someone who can carry out all the things that I've been talking about here, somebody who can lead our development so that we can try to get our core value prop, which is to enable users to drive growth through powerful and easily distributable AI copy out into the world. Because I think we are at the forefront of something really, really incredible. Like AI writing will become the future, augmenting human creativity will be the future. And we want to make sure that as a company, we bring on all the people needed to make sure this vision happens, and that we can enable people to be like an even more awesome version of themselves, so to speak. So that's one of my top priorities. And then as a product, right now, we are very much focused on this distributable aspect of the core value prop we just talked about. So recently, we released a Shopify integration. So you can directly pull in products from Shopify, generate descriptions from within our platform. We have a one-click deploy to Google AdWords that actually just launched today. So that's really, really exciting. We have an SEO integration, which we also just released, which helps you pull in really high SEO keywords into your content and also optimize for topics that you have in your long-form content. So many things right now are oriented around how do we ensure we allow you to both generate content that is super creative and well edited within our platform, and also get it to all the places you need it to go to in order to get that return and get traffic. So that's what we are focusing on. And over the next few months, we will be continuing to focus on this value prop and just really ensuring we dig deep into providing users core value.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for that answer. Congratulations on the fundraise and the recent product launch as well. They're looking for a growth marketer. And if I'm not wrong, if the position is not filled, I think you're also looking for a full stack engineer is what I keep following you on LinkedIn as well. And so what I'll be doing is that wherever you're listening to this or watching this, I'll be linking Copysmith in the description. I'll also be linking their careers page. I'll also be linking LinkedIn profile of or LinkedIn page of the company, and so you can check them out. And make sure that your vision, as they say, your vision deserves a great copy, and you never ever have to start from a blank page again. Thank you everyone for joining in today. I'll see you in the next episode. Thank you, Anna, for joining us as well.